Hey everybody, DM Galabond here, and tonight on Monster Monday, we're going to be taking a look at a monster out of the brand new Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel sourcebook. This is a monster that is called the Soul Shaker. Now, as I said on Friday in my first impressions live stream for Radiant Citadel, I'm a little disappointed that they didn't include the names of the authors within the adventure, nor did they specify which real world culture was the inspiration for these adventures, and particularly for these monsters. The Soul Shaker appears to be a completely new monster for D&D, although its description says it is related to the Crawling Claw. But from the adventure, and without the benefit of knowing which culture's legends and traditional stories inspired the Soul Shaker, I don't know if this is related to a specific cultural mythology or if it's just something that the author dreamed up because it evokes the kind of spooky monsters that appear in stories from their own cultural roots. Now, in terms of D&D, the Soul Shaker is most closely related to the Crawling Claw, an undead, disembodied hand monster that can offer a creepy ambience to any adventure and can pose a threat to zero-level commoners that appear as NPCs in your campaign. Now, the Soul Shaker itself appears in the adventure called Written in Blood, which is geared for level 3 PCs. So, the hacked up corpses in this adventure that provide the body parts for the Soul Shaker make me think of the blood and sacrifice stories of voodoo black magic from Creole culture. But I don't trust my own knowledge of global myths to claim that this is actually what inspired the adventure and this monster, or whether this comes from a completely different tradition. So again, that goes back to a little bit of my frustration about why Wizards of the Coast didn't tell us who the author was and what cultural heritage inspired these stories and these monsters. Because finding a monster like this that's really cool to use, it would then be fun to go and delve into other legends and mythology and histories from that culture to see what other kinds of things you might be able to brew up for your homebrew campaign. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the origins of the Soul Shaker within the adventure. So, this adventure called Written in Blood concerns the search for a missing youth who is the goddaughter of a village elder. Farmers from outlying villages who appear to be affected by some kind of trance or curse enter the village and attack people during a festival. And in the aftermath, the village elder asks the PCs to go find her goddaughter, whom she knows to live in the same area as the farmers that attacked the festival goers. Now, through a series of encounters and investigations that involve finding evidence of many bloodied attacks in the outlying farms, the PCs eventually find the missing youth and realize that she has a sad, tragic, and kind of creepy backstory. It's while the PCs are talking to her that they might become aware of the Soul Shaker and might even be attacked by it. So the Soul Shaker is described as a collective group of crawling claws that are somehow imbued by a dark magic with a sort of malevolent intelligence, while they are joined in the form of the Soul Shaker. But if the monster is dealt enough damage to be destroyed, the individual crawling claws disperse and scatter, running away to hide from the enemies that have been attacking the Soul Shaker. The implication, and it's more than an implication, it outright says that once things calm down again, whatever dark force was behind the creation of the Soul Shaker may stir again, and the disparate crawling claws will find their way back together to form yet another one of the creatures. So you cannot simply kill it by dealing it enough hit points to kill it. Then, once it is killed, all those crawling claws go scattering off, and you have to chase them all down, and you have to destroy every single one of them in order to make sure that the Soul Shaker does not reform. So that makes this a monster that can be one of those recurring threats that comes back over and over again. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how this monster is described and some of the lore associated with it and some of the tactics that you could use as a DM if you are going to put it in a campaign. The Soul Shaker is described as a grasping mass of humanoid limbs. It's an obsessive claimer of corpses and collector of body parts. If defeated, a Soul Shaker disperses into several skittering animate limbs. The terror can only truly be vanquished by destroying these disembodied appendages. If more than one of these pieces escape, the Soul Shaker reforms over the course of days and begins hunting once more. So the lore about these is that the nightmarish creatures arise from ghoulish collections of severed limbs exposed to necromantic energies, or when numerous crawling claws form a cooperative relationship. And tactics for using these, most of the Soul Shaker's victims have their vitality drained and their flesh pulverized by its many arms. However, should a Soul Shaker encounter someone with an impressionable mind, e.g., a low wisdom or a low intelligence score, the creature attempts to charm that individual, using them as a lure to tempt others into its hunting grounds. So that is what makes this especially a creepy monster. Not only does it hunt on its own, but it might go out and it might charm people and entrance them to lure others to it so that it can grow its mass of bloody body parts. Big surprise here, but the creature type for the Soul Shaker is undead. And undead are, of course, once living creatures brought into a horrifying state of undeath through the practice of necromantic magic or some kind of unholy curse. Undead include walking corpses, such as vampires and zombies, as well as bodiless spirits, such as ghosts and specters. Obviously, the Soul Shaker would be the corporeal type of monster that has, well, it doesn't have a full corpse, but it has portions of many corpses that comprise its physical presence, if you will. All right, let's take a look at the Soul Shaker as a monster, the way it's written, and then we're going to imagine several different variations. And if you wanted to make this kind of a recurring villain that your players encounter over and over again, you might have kind of as the mythology that every time it reforms, if it's not completely destroyed, it comes back a little bit stronger than it was before. So we'll look first at the Soul Shaker, which is a tier 1 monster as it's written. And because of how it appears in the campaign, it is designed for level 3 adventurers. So it's a large undead, typically chaotic evil. Armor class of 13, hit point 76, speed 20 feet, and it has a stat block which strength and constitution are its strongest stats. Strength 20, con 18, dex is 8, intelligence 8, wisdom 11, and charisma, surprisingly enough, is 14. Now, charisma, we sometimes think of that as having to do with attractiveness, but really charisma is more sort of its leadership, its personality type of thing. And you wouldn't imagine that a bunch of severed limbs would have much of a personality, but, well, apparently it's pretty charismatic. So it is resistant to necrotic damage, immune to poison damage, immune to being charmed, exhausted, frightened, grappled, paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, knocked prone, or restrained. And it's got blind sight to 60 feet, and it's blind beyond that radius, and a passive perception of 10. And its languages are telepathy out to 60 feet. CR4 proficiency rating of +2. It has the enthralled lure feature, which it can use once per day. Soul Shaker can cast the Gesh spell, requiring no spell components and using charisma as the spellcasting ability. So a spell save DC is 12. And then it also has the reconstruction feature. So when the Soul Shaker is reduced to 0 hit points, it explodes into 7 or 1d4 plus 5 crawling claws. After 1d12 days, if at least 2 of those crawling claws are alive, they teleport to the location of the Soul Shaker's death and merge together, whereupon the Soul Shaker reforms and regains all of its hit points. So you have to destroy every last single individual crawling claw, because if just 2 of them are left, it comes back and it's completely reformed and has all of its hit points once again. So unusual nature, Soul Shaker doesn't require air, food, drink, or sleep. And its actions are Crushing Grasp. It's a melee weapon attack plus 7 to hit, reach 5 feet. One target deals 2d8 plus 5 bludgeoning damage. If the target is a medium or smaller creature, it is grappled with an escape DC of 15. Soul Shaker can have only one creature grappled in this way at a time. And bonus actions are that it can use a Consume Vitality attack. The Soul Shaker targets a creature it is grappling. The creature is not a construct or undead. It must succeed on a DC 14 Constitution saving throw or take 2d6 necrotic damage. The target's hit point maximum is reduced by an amount equal to the necrotic damage taken, and the Soul Shaker regains hit points equal to that amount. This reduction lasts until the target finishes a long rest. The target dies if its hit point maximum is reduced to 0. So that is the Soul Shaker as written. A pretty nasty monster for young adventurers, if you think about it. This is something that you not only have to smash and destroy, but then you have to go and you have to destroy all of its constituent parts as well. So that makes it a little bit tougher than just simply dealing with the Soul Shaker itself. Not to mention the fact that it permanently drains your hit points, or at least semi-permanently, until you finish a long rest. And it reduces your hit point maximum for that time too. Now we're going to imagine a tier 2 variant of this, and I'm just calling it the Soul Render. So this is a monster that you might be able to throw at level 5 characters. So it's armor class 13 or armor class 16 with mage armor, 144 hit points, 30 foot speed, challenge rating of 8, proficiency bonus of +3. And ability scores are strength 20, dex 11, con 18, intelligence 15, wisdom 12, and charisma 16. So the stat curve has gone up a little bit on this. Has an attack bonus of +7, damage bonus of +4. So the has that Crushing Claw attack, which deals 2d8 plus 5 bludgeoning damage. Medium or smaller creatures grappled, DC 15. Or it can use a melee weapon. It can do 2 of those melee weapon attacks. Weapon plus 4 damage, or 1 Crushing Claw and 1 melee weapon attack. Now, important thing to remember is that this version of it can use that Crushing Claw, and it can grapple up to 2 medium creatures at the same time. So it's resistant to necrotic damage, and it's resistant to damage from non-magical weapons that are not silvered. Now, it's immune to poison damage. It's also immune to being charmed, exhausted, frightened, grappled, paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, knocked prone, or restrained. And it has several of the same features, but it's also got a couple of new things. So the Enthralled Lure, it can do once per day. Reconstruction, it will do that as well. The Unusual Nature, the Consume Vitality. Now, Um, on the Consume Vitality, there's a DC 15 Constitution save, and the damage is 3d6 necrotic damage. And then it also has spell casting. And the Soul Render can cast one of the following spells using Charisma as the spellcasting ability and requiring only somatic components. So the spell save DC is 13. At will, it can do Detect Magic, Disguise Self, Mage Armor, and Minor Illusion. And once per day, it can do Darkness, Dimension Door, Dispel Magic, Fly, or Invisibility. And then we have the Tier 3 variant. Tier 3 variant I am calling the Soul Crusher. And this is a monster that is suitable to toss against level 11 in a level 11 party. So now the armor class has bumped up a little bit. It's now armor class 17, 152 hit points, speed of 30 feet, CR 15, proficiency bonus plus 5. The stat block has there's a little bit of a bump up, still strength of 20, dex 12, constitution 18, intelligence 17, wisdom 14, charisma 18. Attack bonus plus 9, damage bonus plus 4. The full attack are the crushing claw attack times 3. So now it can also grapple 3 medium creatures. And the escape DC is still 15. Or it can do 3 melee weapon attacks. Or it can use a feature or an attack called Channel Negative Energy. And it can do this 1 time per round. So Soul Crusher magically unleashes negative energy. Creatures within 50 feet, within 60 feet, including ones behind barriers and around corners, cannot regain hit points until the end of the Soul Crusher's next turn. It's resistant to fire and damage from non-magical weapons that are not silvered. It's immune to necrotic and poison damage, and immune to the charmed, exhausted, frightened, grappled, paralyzed, petrified, poison, prone, and restrained conditions. And then it has the Enthrall Lure, which it can do twice per day. The spell save DC against that is 14. Reconstruction, of course. Unusual Nature. The Consume Vitality now requires a DC 16 Constitution save to save against 4d6 necrotic damage. Still does the same thing of reducing the target's hit point maximum by an amount equal to the necrotic damage. And the Soul Crusher is a spellcaster. So it uses Charisma as a spellcasting ability and requiring only somatic components. Spell save is DC 14. So at will, it can do Sacred Flame, Command, and Shield of Faith. Twice per day, it can do Hold Person, Silence, Dispel Magic, and once per day, it can do Contagion or Harm. So these things are getting more powerful, more magical, dealing more damage, stronger attacks, more attacks as we go. So you can imagine these are either more sophisticated versions of the Soul Shaker, or they could be perhaps larger versions of the Soul Shaker. And then finally, our Tier 4 variant, which you could throw against a level 16 party, is the Soul Reaper. And the Soul Reaper has its 17 armor class, 194 hit points, speed of 30 feet, CR 21, proficiency bonus of plus 7. Now, strength is 20, dex 14, con 18, intelligence 19, wisdom 16, and charisma is 20 as well. Attack bonus of plus 11, damage bonus plus 4. Crushing Claw. It deals, you can do this 3 times. So again, it can grapple up to 3 opponents, 2d8 plus 5 bludgeoning damage, and DC 15 escape, 3 melee weapon attacks, or a disrupt life attack. And each non-undead creature within 20 feet of the Soul Reaper must make a DC 18 Constitution saving throw, or take 66 necrotic damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. It resists fire, cold, and damage from non-magical weapons that are not silvered. It's immune to necrotic and poison damage and all of the same conditions as before. It has the Enthralled Lure, which it can now do 3 times per day, and the Charisma save is DC 15. The Reconstruction, it still has Unusual Nature, and when it comes to the Consumed Vitality, this now requires DC 18 Constitution saving throw or take 66 necrotic damage. And once again, that reduces the hit points maximum until a long rest, as well as dealing that damage. And then spell casting, it can cast one of the following spells using Charisma, and the spell save DC is up to 15. So at will, it can do Mage Hand, Ray of Frost, Magic Missile, or Shield. Twice per day, it can do Mirror Image, Counter Spell, or Fireball. Once per day, it can do Cloud Kill, Finger of Death, or Dominate Monster. So that is how I have imagined the Soul Shaker becoming more and more and more powerful variations. Now, if you're wondering, how did I figure all of that stuff out? Well, what I did is I looked at other more powerful undead, and I did a little bit of interpolation of what the stat block of the stronger Soul Shaker would be, and mixed that in with some of the features that some of these more powerful undead at different challenge ratings actually have. So the power curve of this should be fairly in line with other monsters out of D&D that have a similar challenge rating. All right, and that is going to do it for our look at the Soul Shaker and the homebrew variants that we have, that I have created. So I have been DM Galabond. This has been Monster Monday. Thank you so much for watching. If you've been watching this far, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video, and click the post notification bell. Now, many times I have several other live streams that I do during the week. This summer has been rife with disruptions. Everything from disruptions for work to disruptions for soccer to disruptions for travel, which a lot of people haven't had a chance to do for the last couple of years. So, as a DM, I am not begrudging my players getting a chance to go on vacation, and enough people having to be out of town that we just have to cancel games. But most of the time we play on Sunday afternoons at 2 p.m. That is our planeswalking game, the Walker of Waterdeep. Then on Wednesday evenings at 8 p.m., we also play most weeks. That is the Sword Coast Chronicles, which is our 5th edition exploration of the different campaigns that are official campaigns from 5th edition Wizards of the Coast. Right now, we are in the middle of playing through the Tomb of Annihilation storyline. And then on Saturday nights at 7:30 p.m., we do an old school game. We have a throwback game all the way back to 2nd edition D&D, and we call that Saturday Night Greyhawk. Right now, we are going through the original Temple of Elemental Evil. So if you've never played through that adventure, if you're kind of curious what that is like, you can come and join us Saturday evening, 7:30 p.m., and we are going through that adventure. All of those live streams happen over on Twitch. All of the archives of the live streams are right here on YouTube, along with all of the other content that I create. So please go through, look at a bunch of the catalog of the straight to YouTube videos, as well as the live stream archives, and enjoy as much of that as you would like. We also have a Patreon. If you want to help us try to create more content, we would love to see you over there on the Patreon. All right, next week we are going to go back to the Critical Role called the Netherdeep sourcebook, and we will be taking a look at the Gloomstalker as our monster from that source book. All right, everyone, take care. Hope you have a wonderful week. I have been DM Galabond, and I'm reminding you to watch out for the monsters under the bed. Good night, everybody.